In this lecture, we're going to look at Angular Firebase authentication with material design. Welcome to CodeWithSrini, and let's jump right in. So let's fire up our Angular CLI and create a new app, which I already did. So it'll be ng new Angular Firebase Auth. So Angular Firebase Auth will be our app name. And once the app is created, we should be navigating inside this directory, which is, I'm currently right now inside the Angular Firebase directory. And we need to fire up our Visual Studio Code, which is code dot, and this will bring up our Visual Studio Code IDE, right? So we are in the app folder, and it'll have a basic bootstrap scaffolding for an Angular app, right? First of all, let's go ahead and install the Angular Firebase, install Firebase for Angular, which should be Firebase and at Angular Fire, which I already did, which is npm install and save and Firebase as well as Angular Fire. Angular Fire is the new module, which is earlier it was Angular Fire 2. Now it's renamed to Angular Fire. Also, we need to visit to Angular Firebase console and configure our application to make use of Firebase, which is at console firebase google.com right over here. Alright, so let's go ahead. The first step is adding a project. So when adding a project, that you need to click the add project and with a plus icon in it. So once you click on it, we'll be moving on to step 2, which is add a project. And we need to give a project name for our application, which is Angular Firebase Auth. It could be anything that you wish to name it for. It's based on your application naming, right? So I just kept it as Angular Firebase Auth for now. Now click on to create a new Firebase project. Thing is, this is a screenshot which I already done this process and stepped over it. Okay, once the project is ready, click on the continue and then head over to the project overview and adding Firebase to your app, right? So you will be provided with the methods to the implementation details to add your Firebase to your app. For the JavaScript or Angular or any HTML web dev related things, you need to click on the angle bracket icon, right? And finally, I clicked on the web app, web development or web app, whatever, for the JavaScript code, and it will be presented with your configuration objects such as var config and a bunch of properties such as API key, auth domain, so the project ID. So these information is crucial, and you need to fit this information into your application, which I'll be showing you shortly. Finally, copy this section as I said and surrounded by the red rectangle in this screenshot and paste it in your environments TypeScript file. Environments, right? It's right over the environment folder, and you'll have two kinds of environment. The one is the prod, and the other one is the environment TS. We need to make use of the environment TS for now. Yeah, we need to make use of the environments TS. Now we have our Firebase configuration ready in our application. The next step will be to visit the Firebase console and look up the section called authentication and set up sign-in methods, right? By default, let's go ahead to the Firebase. Alright, by default, the sign-in status for all the providers will be disabled. We have to enable them in order to use it. For example, if we have to use Google sign-in provider, then hit on the tab and give your email address and save it. That's it. The implementation may vary based on the authentication you may need. For Facebook, for example, let's just cancel this out and then go to the Facebook. It'll ask for your app ID and app secret, which you need to set that up in your Facebook profile. And for same for the GitHub, so you need to set up client ID and client secret. So once you have the necessary APIs for the relevant applications or relevant providers, that's what Firebase calls that, you can just hook that up and make use of sign-in methods in your application. So you can enjoy various methods of signing into your, making the user to sign into your application by providing the users with the opportunity of whether they can use Google or Facebook or Twitter or GitHub. Let's go to the app module TS. So this is the starting point of our application, and we need to import our Angular Fire module and Angular FireAuth module into the app module. So once you do that, your application will be ready, and all the necessary modules for the Firebase will be ready when you want to do some operations based on the Firebase. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is, in the imports, I don't know if it's gonna work. I'm just gonna try it. So it's going to be Angular Fire module at first. Okay, before that, I need to make sure I need to add the environments into the app module, which is import environment. So that's the variable, right? So that's a field. Actually, environment is a field, and we need to use a field. We need to call that field. So we need to import it from the place called environments and environment. Okay, if you look closely, we never used .ts because the TypeScript automatically includes ts when it's going to import the file, which is and the double dot with a slash means we are going one step higher up in the directory, and then traversing it in the environments directory, and then calling up the environment ts file, which is right here. Okay, so that's fair and clear. Now once you include the environment ts, we need to make use of the declaration that we have done for the Firebase. Okay, so in the import statement, as I started earlier, it should be Angular Fire module. Okay, and then the Angular Fire module will have a method called initialize app and the environment dot Firebase. Okay, so this is the first part of our implementation. So, and now it's complaining with a red squiggly lines. That means you have not imported the Angular Fire module into the import statement at the top. Let's try this out. It should be command and period to do the inclusion automatically, but it's not happening, which means for some reason it's not happening. So which means we need to include them manually. So it's the Angular Fire module from Angular Fire. Okay, so we have installed Angular/Fire, and the red squiggly line should disappear, which it already did. Okay, and the second part is including the Angular FireAuth module. So that's the one we're gonna use, right? And let's try the same thing. No, we need to manually include them. I'm just gonna copy this. Should be import and paste it over here from Angular FireAuth. All right, so we have just done some setup, pretty much good to go. Right now, before jumping into anything further, let's create a component for our login, which is a component and a service. So nggc auth/login. So ng, in this case, ng means ng CLI, and G means generate, and C means component. So we're going to generate a login component, and once that's done, you will get a directory with a login as a directory and a bunch of login components directory with a set of files that it has created, which is a CSS, HTML template, and then a class file. So this is the backbone, and which binds the CSS and HTML together. All right, and we need to create a service as well. So nggs auth/login. Typo. So once that's done, you will get a login service right under the auth directory. Okay, now what shall we do? Let's go to the login component for start. I'm gonna just close this up. I think it's not necessary to open too many things in the ID. So let's go to the login component. I'm just gonna get rid of this and have a button with a text called login with Google, something like that. So that's the one we already set up as a provider for our Firebase. And then let's give it a click event to our button that says login Google. Now the sad part is we haven't we haven't executed our application to check if there is error going on. So yep, button click login Google, that's fine. Let's create a method in our class file, which is a login component TS, because once you click on it, it should get captured here. So login Google. For now, it should be console log, which says login. That's enough for now. And to get the login working, we need to include Angular Firebase Auth and Auth from Firebase app into our login service, right? So in the login service right over here, let's create a constructor. Constructor is already created. Let's create a field in our constructor called private AF auth, which is AngularFirebaseAuth. That's the name of it, which is in a short form, and AngularFirebaseAuth. So when you do that, automatically TypeScript imports that for you. Visual Studio Code imports that for you with a module in Fire and Auth, and the name of the class is AngularFireAuth. Okay, so in our login method, that's in the type. Hang on a second. We haven't created a. All right, we just created a field in a class, and we need to create a login method, which is a login and console log. This is just to keep track of what's happening inside the application when you click a login event. Okay, so redirecting, it's really not necessary, just to keep track. Google login provider. Okie doke. And this .af, so we're going to initialize, we're going to invoke a login authentication service to AngularFireAuth, which will redirect to a Google login provider. So this is based on the providers that when a user clicks in. For example, if you have login with Facebook, you should be doing login Facebook, and then in the end, from the component to the service, you should have another function called login Facebook, and then it should be redirecting to the respective Firebase module. Sorry, the respective sign-in providers. So in this case, we are redirecting it into a Google, so it'll be AF auth dot. It'll have a set of methods and properties. So we're going to use the auth. These things are all available in the Angular Firebase Fire 2 GitHub documentation. So it's plain and clear over there. And when you click on the period, it will show up an IntelliSense with a list of methods available for you to take an action. So in this case, if you come down a little bit, it will show up all the sign-in providers, like sign in with phone number, sign in with pop-up. Sorry, it's not provider, sign in methods, and sign in with. We're going to use sign in with a redirect, and in that we're going to call up the Google Auth provider. Okay, so that's done. And then we haven't done anything in our component file. So we are in the login component, and we need to create a field in a class called private service and login service. So once that's done, your login service is imported automatically, and then in here it should be this dot service dot login. Okay, so it just completes the cycle. From here, when you click on it, it'll go to login Google method in the component, and then from there, through dependency injection, you'll be calling up the login method in the service, and that in turn calls up the Google Auth provider. Fair and clear, I guess. Now we need to do one more thing in the. Okay, let's before firing up the application, we need to complete a few more things. Okay, so let's go to the app component class file, which is right over here. I'm gonna get rid of this. We don't need this. Okay, import AngularFire, which is import AngularFireAuth from Angular and Fire and Auth. Okay, and we need to create a component constructor, which is a constructor. Create a field in a class called private AF auth, like we did in the login service. So AngularFireAuth. Now finally we need to subscribe to the authentication that we have created. So once, if a user is logged in, we need to create a subscribe. The AngularFireAuth will publish user information if the user has logged in. If the user has not logged in, it will just throw up a null for the user. So if the user is logged in, it will publish details about the user, which we'll be looking at shortly. We can do this in constructor itself, but we should not pollute the constructor. As per the convention, we should be making use of ng on init lifecycle hook. The ng on init, for the ng on init, we should implement on init interface, and automatically it includes, right? So it should be this dot af auth dot auth state. So this auth state will hold information about the user who has logged in, and as I said, we need to subscribe to that state and get the user information, right? So we have just, it's a the subscribe will emit some information, some variable or a field. For now I just gave it as user. It could be anything. It could be X or it could be D for data. So this is a data field. So since the auth state holds a user information, I just gave it as user as a name for our the response, and it opens up a code block with a fat arrow, and I'm gonna just console them into my browser. Okay, so far we haven't executed our application, so it's ng serve localhost 4200. We have something in our console. Sorry for scrolling back and forth. This is the user information, the Firebase, which Firebase is holding on. Okay, I think I need to clear some cache before proceeding further. All right, right now I just cleared the cache, and then we are getting null for the user. So the next thing is, I'm gonna just go to the app component HTML template and get rid of all the default things that are created by the Angular CLI. So it's fair and square now. Okay, so we forgot to add a few more information, which is a app login. In the app login, you will get a we have created a button with a click event. Okay, so once you click on it, it will redirect to our Google Auth provider, and it will ask for the choose an account to log in. So this is the account that I have. So once I click on it, it will log in and redirect to our app component, and after some time it will show up a list of an object. So Firebase will give up an object with some information in it. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so we can see what sort of information that it passes. This information, if you look at it, it looks a lot of gibberish, like, I mean, a lot of closure functions going in and around. Okay, and in the midst of it, you instantly notice the display name, email verified, and the best of all is, where it is, photo URL. Yes, so these information is sufficient enough for us to manipulate parts of our application, such as navigate after successful login or throw up an error, whatever you wish to take an action upon these response. But for me, I'm going to assign this to a field in a class called user, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a field in a class called user with an interface called Firebase.user. I'm going to just close this up, and after that, I'm just gonna have this for now. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Login service, private here forgot this. Okay, and the ng on in it, just after the console, we can have this .user. This .user, too fast in typing. This .user equals user, right? So that will do. So it will hold up information about my information about the logged in user into the user field, right? So in the app component template file, right, just before this app login, we can have something like h3 element and then user logged with the interpolation that says user dot display name. Alrighty, so this should pretty much work. Okay, let's look at the error. Cannot read property display name of undefined. Okay, that means that the user is undefined for at the start. Okay, so when you load this application, the user is undefined and display name is undefined for now. But when you look at it, it still works with an error, right? We just need to bypass this error. To do that, we need to give a question mark which says if the display name is available, then show up, or else just don't use that up. Okay, so there are no errors in our console, so we are good to go. In other words, it's known as if user is available or the value is not undefined, then show display or just degrade gracefully. So it just degraded gracefully. Alright, instead of doing this, let's move this piece of code into our app login, which is here in the app login template. I bet we will be having trouble. And same way, in the app login component, we should have much of the information that we have provided in the app component TS. We should move this as well to over here, and we need to add AF. No, I think we messed up a little bit. Alright, after we move much of our code from app component, we need to create a method called getLoggedInUser with a return type of this.AFAuthState.AuthState, which will return the user information to whichever component that is calling up. So in our case, we are calling this method from our login component TS. In the ng on in it, we are making use of the getLoggedInUser, which will return the auth state of our user, and finally we are assigning it to our field in a class called user. Alright, so this is pretty much done. Now let's make the login button which is showing up, which is rendering still, disappear once the user logs in successfully and let's create a new logout button for that. Okay, so let's close this up. Let's close the app components and things and keep our login component open up. right? So first thing first, let's hide this button if the user logs in. So it should be ngIf. What else could it be, right? So if it's not user, which means if the user is null, then show the button, or else hide the button. So user is available, so the button is hidden. And the next bit is we're gonna have a button called logout, and obviously it should show up when the user is available, so just user. So showing up the logout. So let's go ahead and create a method for the logout button, which will be a click event and logout. We need to implement this logout. So let's go to login component and create a logout method, which is logout, and this dot service dot logout. We are missing something here, so the service doesn't have a logout method. We should go to the service and create a method called logout. This dot AF, you should make use of the AngularFireAuth AF auth dot sign out. At the time of recording, the AngularFireAuth have a method called sign out. In the future module, it could change it into logout or some other naming conventions. Right now it is sign out. Just keep checking the API documentation if they have changed anything. All right, this is just the start. Okay, let's check this out. So when you log out, everything is wiped out, and when you log in, it should go redirect and click on it. It should arrive at our application with yes. Okay, this is just the start. Let's implement this Angular material into this mix. Okay, first up, let's look at the scaffolding we have to begin with. Our starter template has some ready-made features for material design. I'm not going to run through the entire process of setting up the material design. Just click on the top right corner for the tutorial that takes you to setting up a material design and do some customization video. In the starter template, we'll be having a bunch of material components such as toolbar, side nav, icons, list, and buttons. Now we're not going to use most of it. We're just going to use toolbar, obviously button, and an avatar to show up the user logged in with an image, the one that you see here. Okay, so let's start by installing Angular material. For that, we need to fire up our integrated terminal, which is control tilde, clear that up, which is npm install save at angular/material and angular/cdk. Okay, so this should get this thing going. I'm gonna close the application whilst it's installing, or I got some issue here. I need to look this later on. Okay, and in the VS Code, let's create a new file called material module. So in the app, I'm going to just create a new file, material-module.ts, and I already have the code ready made. I'm gonna make use of that. And in the app module, we need to include, which is here, we need to include our material design. In the imports, after the browser module, should be material module, and that's been included over here. So that's done, and we need to add a material style to our application in the style CSS, which is right over here. Let's add a style, and also some styling to our application. Same old mistake, forgetting to include a @import. Okay, so once that's done, you should know, I think we haven't started our application, so let's go ahead and do some ng-serve and serve our application. Right, and add material icons to our application. adding material icon is simple. We need to go to the index.html and just add it over there. So that should work. And let's fire up the application. I think it's still working. Cannot find module crypto. All right, in the app component HTML, so TS, let's get rid of this, and let's get rid of this. Okay, I think I used this. All right, this should work, and it works perfectly fine with some little bit of change in styling. That's a good start. Right, now let's move on to creating a toolbar. Alright, to create a toolbar component that houses our material toolbar, let's go ahead and give a command called ng generate component and toolbar. That's done, and then so we need to add our newly created toolbar to our component, app component, which is here. So it should be, which will be top of all other components, right? So it should be app toolbar. I think it should work now. Toolbar works perfectly fine. And let's move on to toolbar HTML. Let's close this, close everything up, clutter free. Let's go to the toolbar and component. So we need to make use of material design. For toolbar, it's mat toolbar. Alright, we got our toolbar, something like toolbar showing up in our app. Okay, so let's customize our toolbar a little bit. We're just gonna give it a ID for our toolbar, which is a main toolbar, and let's give a primary color and some information to our toolbar, and awesome project, which is a title for our toolbar, and then some span with a class called toolbar spacer. And finally we should have a button. Okay, let's have a button. I think the button should be the last step, but that's okay, it's just a button. And that button is nothing but a material button, which is a button mini FAB, floating action button, with a color. It should be of same color, which is a primary color, picked up from the theme. For now this is fine. Let's see how it looks. That's great. So we have our FAB here and the title here. Right, so this FAB should contain our icon that we logged in. The CodeWithSrini icon avatar should come over here, and there is some issue. It should be at the far right corner. And yes, we forgot to include things in the style sheet. What I'm going to do is, I already have the source code for styling, which I did in the earlier video. I'm just going to copy paste that styling over here and get the things rolling. Okay, so neat and perfect. We have our avatar at the far right corner and our title at the far left, and a space between these both. It's nothing but a flex box with a toolbar spacer class, and the toolbar icon, I don't think so we need this. You're not going to use this, and obviously the toolbar avatar will be our button. So toolbar avatar should be, the class should be toolbar and avatar. Okay, so this is neat. The avatar the button is not showing up. The raised button FAB is just a flat, because in my style I gave it as a box shadow as none. So that is why we are not getting a raised button. So if I just comment that, you can notice it. Right, you see. So I'm just going to leave that as none, because that looks plush and neat. Alright, so let's modify our material button a little bit to accept an icon, an avatar on top of the button. So to do that, we have everything matte mini fab and toolbar avatar and color as primary. So we need to include a style to our button. It should be background image. Okay, so silly of me, I just included the double quotes. That's why the showing up the red property as red. And URL, we are just concatenating it with a user and dot photo URL. We already have this, so that's fine for now. This property has been picked up from the module, the Firebase user that returns the photo URL like this. So we're going to make use of this. And so we have included our background image. So let's go check out, inspect our element, and then see what's happening so far. All right, the style showing up as null. The URL is null over here, which is a very wrong thing. Okay, and that's because we haven't included the user property field in a class for a toolbar. So that will be our next step. So let's inject the login service to fetch the login details. So let's go to the toolbar component and then inject our login service, which is private login service and login service, which will be from the auth login, right? And in the ng on it, before that, you should have a field in a class called Firebase.user as an interface, and we need to assign them like we have did earlier, right? So in the ng on init, it should be this dot login service dot get logged in user and subscribe to that event. So user, and that points to a code block. It should have this dot user, assign them to the this dot user field in a class. Bingo, we already got it. Okay, and the other part of the trick is in the toolbar avatar, the background size is set to cover, which means however large the image is, it will just accommodate based on the size of an element. In our case, the button is only somewhere around some 50 pixels across 50 pixels. So the image is basically, it's large, somewhere around 500 pixels. But if you set it as cover, it will just cover up the elements. They cover up the width and height of an element, right? So this is just one tip. Now let's add a drop-down menu. This does nothing and no useful information provided here. So let's go ahead and add a drop-down menu called matte menu. Should be outside. No, I don't know. Let's just try this out. So it should be matte menu, and our menu should have a template variable called avatar dropdown to make it more readable. And that avatar dropdown should be matte menu. Okay, the next bit is I'm going to introduce a matte material card, which is matte card, and the matte card will have a matte card header. Oh god, should be matte card header, and the header section will have matte card. I'm just quick on my fingers, making too many mistakes, typos. That's the usual practice. I should stop avoiding that. So user, display name, fine, and should have a subtitle, and that should have an email. So this is a typical YouTube way of showing a drop down for an avatar. If you go check out the YouTube, you can instantly notice that it'll have an avatar, and then when you click on it, it'll have a drop down. I mean, YouTube-ish kind of, but not entirely YouTube style, because they do a lot of customization on top of material design. And finally, a button with a matte menu item. Okay, no, that's totally wrong. It should be an attribute. So mat menu item, and that button should have it's a sign out button, so the button should have a click event that leads to a logout method. Ideally it should be named as sign out, but I'm just got used to the logout fashion. Login and logout should be sign in and sign out. So we're going to introduce a mat icon and that nice little icon called exit to app with a span of sign out. Alrighty, the thing is it won't show up, and we have an error in our unexpected closing tag for subtitle. Yeah, I already mentioned I have quick fingers and I make too many mistakes while typing. Should avoid that. Okay, there is no directive with export as and mat menu. So to complete this process, we should include a mat menu. We should assign this to a button. So the avatar drop down, the mat menu is this part over here, what you see. I'm gonna just keep it like that. And then sorry for going just scrolling between vertically. What I'm going to do is just copy this. We need this drop down. I mean, the drop down needs some sort of assignment to where you're going to assign. So we're going to assign it to a button for our avatar. So the avatar is over here. So we need to assign a drop down right there. For that, we need to bind it to a property called mat menu trigger for, and the name of our drop down, which is drop down avatar. Does it work? No, it isn't a known property of button. So I think we don't have a mat menu included in our material module, so we need to, where is it? It's not available, so we should add that up. So mat menu module. Silly of me, I should have included that in the first hand, because planning an application is absolute necessary before you begin coding. So when you start building an application, you should know what sort of a module you should plan, what modules you will be including. Okay, so just this lesson for me, and the application runs without a mistake. So when you click on it again, we are getting an error. Okay, the application needs no op animations module or browser animation module, whichever you want in your application, right? So let's go ahead and have no op animation module. All right, so to get the no op animation module, we should import no op animations from. All right, so the error is because I didn't included a no op animations or browser animations for our application. So it should be from the platform browser animations and no op animations module, and include it in the imports over here. So once you've done that, your app will be ready, and click on it. You will have your details, logged in user details, and a sign out button. So once you log out, it should log out from your application. So we need to bind the click event to our TS, which is obviously log out, and we need to call upon the login service dot log out. So that will do the logout action, that will complete the process ideally. Now we almost completed. I'm gonna just check one more time. Sign out and user logged out. Okay, so we almost completed the process of adding an avatar and putting our toolbar and completing the cycle of signing in and signing out. But there is more. Let's clean up the application a little bit. We have, still showing up the button and things like that. So we need to clean up a little bit. So this is not how an application will look. So we need to hide toolbar if the user not logged in, and show a big login button if the user is not logged in, and hide the login button and show the toolbar after the login. So let's do it quickly and wrap this up. So in the toolbar component HTML, Let's add a condition called ngIf structural directive with a user. So it will show up only when the user is logged in. Since the user is not logged in, we aren't showing that up. And in the login component HTML, which is over here, let's get rid of this user logged in thingy. We don't need that anymore. And for the button, for the login button, let's have this, which will look a little bit neat. Yes. And add a material. Yeah, we just add a material button. So let's complete the process here for logging in, and you click on it, logs in, and shows up our toolbar. Yes. And we'll deal with that delay in the process later on in the later video as a separate video. Okay, so this is how it works, and we need to clean the logout button. We don't need a logout button here, so just get rid of the logout button. Alright, so logout is gone, and it will launch your application. So you will be ideally having a dashboard or some sort of information for that particular user. So the drop down works and the sign out works, and that's done. So at last the lecture is completed. So this is just a skeleton. We need to fit this puzzle in a larger application to get the entire system working. Okay, this video is just a start, and I'll be posting more videos on how to build a complete Angular project from end to end. So please keep watching my channel for latest updates. Thank you for watching. I hope you will find this part of lecture very useful. If you have a request or suggestion, please write down in the comments below. And thanks again, and have a good day. Thank you.